You're listening to Sports Talk on CNA 938. In the house this morning is Senior Minister of Law and Health, Edwin Tong, and Deputy President of the FAS, Bernard Tan. If you want to get in on the conversation, put a question to them, talking about football, as if I'm pretending to, like I know what I'm talking about. Goal 2034 669 11938 is our number. Sports Talk continues after this. Stay with us. A very good morning.
Once we start with a good base at the bottom, growing the passion and the interest, I think there will be a much broader base from which we can choose. So for me, I think we want to go back to the past where we had local sporting legends as heroes. I always tell, I met Samad Alipiche yesterday. He was Singapore captain for many years. I said, I used to collect stickers of him, put in my Ovaltine or Milo book, and I'll treasure that. And I think we want to create legends, heroes, some people, footballers for our youngsters to emulate, to be inspired by, and at some stage also to say, what does it mean for me as a young footballer? Can I aspire to that role?
But not many people know that you are a brigadier general in the army, and now you're with the private sector. How did you get involved in football?
Curiously, it's the same way, Sasi, and the story of getting involved in football is exactly what we're trying to recreate. In primary 2, I was asked by one friend who said, can you play football? I said, no. He says, never mind, go down there. When the ball comes to you, just kick it away. And I was hooked. And from the age of primary 2 onwards, every preschool, before school, recess, and after school, I continued to play. I watched my first FA Cup final between Manchester United and Liverpool in 1976. Started supporting Liverpool since then.
I was going to qualify that. You're a Liverpool fan.
I am a Liverpool fan.
I would qualify that by saying that 76 was Man U Southampton.
Yeah.
Man U Liverpool was 77.
77,
Whoa,
sorry.
there you go.
I know that because 76 was Man U was supposed to beat Southampton. They lost. And that was when I was hooked.
That's 1-0.
So this is a die-hard Manchester United fan that goes by. It's not the glory hunting days, right? So.
Yeah. And so, the same thing, I think a lot of the experiences that we had in our generation growing up are basically free play. Free play in school, free play at home. We used to play in the void decks. I used to live in Marine Parade. There were plenty of open grass around. It wasn't so built up then. The East Coast Park was new. We could play anywhere. And that's how I got involved with soccer.
Let's talk about what we're here for, Goal 2034. I love the idea. I love the idea of aiming big. But we need the state-of-the-art technology. We need the people to take us to the moon if we are going to go there. Right now, we're on a raggedy double-decker bus that's going nowhere. So it's no surprise that people are really skeptical about the project. Edwin, here's a question for you. Where did Goal 2034 come from? We know there was a joint, there's talk about joint ASEAN bid to host the 2034 World Cup. Did it come from there? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, within the FAS, we've always talked about what we can do to really marshal the ground and the resources, and what we can do to improve the state of football. So the first task of the day after we went into council was to look at our local league. So we've ramped it up, sought to professionalize some aspects of it. So the SPL now, 2 seasons down, we think is a better creature than what it was before, with a lot more headroom and a lot more potential. But I think that's not enough. We want something that allows us to say, how do we organize the grassroots football? How do we sort out training in school? How do we give a pathway for boys who are playing well beyond 15, 16 into college, into university? And of course, we have to also grapple with the elephant in the room, which is national service. And on top of that, how do we then look at coaching the coaches, improving standards? So when we bring all of that together, we thought, what better way to draw all those strands together than to have a project that really unifies it, that inspires, that motivates, and that helps us to galvanize our resources behind it. And that really is the motivation behind Goal 2034.
Okay, Bernard, you champion for youth development. What improvements have you seen in the last 2 years?
Well, thank you, Sasi. So I spend a lot of my time in the FAS looking at kids and asking them what they want. So the first thing I will just come across is that they deserve a dream. And Goal 2034 is really a dream for our kids. I want to make one very clear distinction that, when people talk about Goal 2010, it's very different. Goal 2010 was really about naturalizing very talented foreigners into our national team, putting them into the Singapore squad and achieving glory through that. Now, that strategy failed for various reasons, including changes in the FIFA laws, but it also made the development of players less of a priority. Go 2034 is all about our kids. It's all about trying to get our kids moving up the ladder, trying to make sure that they have quality training. At the start, just free play, just getting the base of playing. Then a lead pathway to actually have a good quality training. We've done pieces, like what Edwin has mentioned. There are a lot of pieces that we've had. Today, if you wanted to play soccer, it's easier. There are more schools offering soccer than, let's say, when we first entered. There are programs in which kids have free play. Active SG now has kids program in all its 5 centers. Over 800 soccer players are actually benefiting from that. But that's small. So actually, we want to think big. We want thousands to participate in this program, not hundreds.
Weekends will never be the same again in Singapore. That's because on both Saturday and Sunday, I'll be here on CNA 938 bringing you the best in sports. With me today, Senior Minister of Law and Health, Edwin Tong, and Bernard Tan, FAS Deputy President, are here to discuss 2034. Here's a question. How invested are Sports SG in football? Because there are undertones that it's a struggle for FAS to execute on its vision as funds are limited due to Sports SG holding the purse strings really tight. Any truth in that?
I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is that we are custodians of Singapore football, and we can't just say, give us the money and trust it with us. I think accountability means also that we have to produce our plans. It's got to be market tested. We have got to go to our stakeholders, and that includes Sport SG, MCCY, our regulators, and we have got to get everyone on board. This is a vision we have. We've shared it with everyone else around us. But I think, as you heard from our president yesterday, it's not a vision we can carry out and execute ourselves. So we want to use this as a rallying call, bring together all stakeholders. And by that, I don't just mean government and regulators. I also mean the private sector, parents, the boys, schools, people who hold resources like stadiums, facilities, training areas. Everyone must come behind this vision and this dream. And when we do that, I think we can look at funding as the next step. But I think first we sort out what we want to do, how we're going to get there, what those plans are, and which stakeholders are with us.
This is a 15-year vision, right? It's a long-drawn vision. The Exco will be there for another 2 years. What happens if we embark on this journey and you guys are no longer in power? What happens to the vision? Because everybody's invested, everybody's going in one direction. We all know the Japanese had a 100-year football vision. How invested are we to really see these through to the next 15 years?
I can only speak for as long as we are here, but I think from what I can see so far, there's been a lot of commitment behind this. Whether we actually realize it or not is something else. And I'll be the first to tell you, it's not an easy objective. I think we all know that. But if we don't aim big, we don't dream large, we'll get nowhere. So we set ourselves a target, and I'm confident that in this 15-year period, we will improve the level of football, the standard of football, even if we don't get to goal 2034. Along the way, there'll be ups and downs, and I think we have to be prepared for that. There'll be moments where we say, where is this going? There'll be moments where we say, this is going to be another 2010. Let's just stay the course. And it starts with the ability to galvanize everyone, sharing that vision. Whether we'll be here beyond 2 years, we can't say. But it's something that we like to set in stone, and hopefully the momentum will carry us through, even if a new team takes over.
Yeah. So who's leading the project now?
I would say it's still in the concept phase with FAS. We talk about it regularly ourselves with Exco, with Council. We meet our stakeholders, we talk to ex-footballers, yourself is one, and we slowly shape the animal and shape the project. Along the way, I think there will be various people who will head and lead different aspects of this project. So schools is one, facilities is another, what we do with the coaches, how we look at the elites, where we do with in terms of 16, 17-year-olds with national service and with further higher tertiary education is another issue. So there are so many different parts to it. There will need to be different leaders for each of these aspects.
So what's the priority now? The league, youth development, national team? Because when you look at youth level, because I've got sons who are 8 and 6 who play in the JSSL league, which is right now, I would say, the apex of youth competition, which is run by a private operator. And what plans are in place the FAS can eventually replace that, because as the governing body of football in Singapore, the league should be a non-paid-to-play model. Then you can get the best players there. So what's being done to address that?
So let me sell you a dream. And the dream comes with really painting out what 2034 really ought to be looking like. The first is we want our kids to play. And I emphasize the word play. We don't need to compete when you're 6 to 12. You just want to run with the ball. The reason why we all love the game, it's such a simple game. If you get a kid and you want him to run 2.4 kilometers, he's going to pull a face with you. But if you drop a ball and you form 2 goalposts with your school bags, immediately the kid runs. We want that kind of level of free play. Today, I think all the kids are not playing, not because they don't want to, they're restricted. We need to remove the constraints. We need to let kids be kids again, right? And this means opening up more fields, opportunities to organize games that is not so complicated, that the level of supervision needs to be relaxed. It's a safe place to play. We used to play in school, never really got into trouble, just allow play. If that's the case, the first part of the vision is enabling a much wider base of kids who have the basic movements, and we include girls in this. The second thing is for our talented kids, they deserve much more. Today, if you wanted to get elite training, you have to go to specialized areas, and that requires a lot of travel, and it's very demanding for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old to balance this with academia. We want to make it very convenient. We want more places where you can do this, and more importantly, like you have pointed out, they deserve quality coaches. Iceland does what it does because they have so many UEFA B coaches right in schools. Can we do that? The level of competition needs to increase. You are right. Kids will never develop if they are playing a team where they're trashing 16-0. At first, the team that wins learns nothing. The team that gets trashed wants to give it up. We need to get teams playing one another and the top teams stretching one another so that kids develop. I think these are very important things that we need to build into the infrastructure. Lastly, we need infrastructure. If we want more kids to play, we need to have opening up more areas, opening up more time slots, prioritizing children. Right? Today, if you want to book a field, it's very difficult. But let's put the priorities in our kids. This is a dream for our children.
Welcome back. We are talking Goal 2034 on CNA 938. This is Sports Talk Sunday. With me today is Senior Minister of Law and Health Edwin Tong and Bernard Tan, FAS Deputy President. I know you're sure to remind me of that. All right, gentlemen. One of the things that's really, really key when we look at the project like this, we need the money, we need the support of the government. Of course, we need to navigate national service. We're just talking of Ben Davies has decided, or at least he was called up to play for the Thai under-23. He's in the provisional squad. Are we going to see more of that happen, or how are we going to make sure that we keep the best and make sure that we have enough talent to make sure that in the crucial part of their football development, they're not going away and serving national service for 2 years? It's not that I'm saying it's a bad thing, but for an athlete, a prime athlete, 2 years of their life is really, really important. How are we going to navigate that?
Well, you're right. I think that's 18, 19 years old is the prime of an athlete's development. And whether one makes it or not really depends on those crucial years. But at the same time, I think in Singapore, I think we must look at sport in the context of the larger national interest. And national service is precisely one of those things that we have to navigate. We can't compromise national service, but I think we can find ways to work within the system to develop it and to enhance sporting capability. If you look back, Sasi, to the days of the 70s, 80s, when you were playing, Pandey was playing, even generations before that, Muhammad Noor, Samad and so on, national service was there. And so people were able to balance both and yet brought Singapore football to a level. So I'm not saying we can go back to the 70s and 80s and do the same thing, but I think there is a way in which we can work within the system to achieve what we want to achieve. Now, having said that, you asked about Ben Davies. We don't want another scenario where we lose talent. We want to make sure that we muster all the talent we have here, make sure they see their future with Singapore, playing for Singapore, having pride in playing for Singapore. And that's what we want.
669-11938 is the number in the studio. Vic is calling in. Vic, very good morning. I haven't heard from you in a very, very long time.
Yeah. I've not been talking very long. So,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. You have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. Question is that, when first this news was flashed and everybody was talking about it, I would just like to give some feedback from what I heard from the ground. There was this very sarcastic remark, sniggering, and they say, well, you go again, this all talk, and it won't take place. How do you think first they will change the mindset of many fans who feel that this may not actually pull through because we went through previously once the 2010 didn't go on?
Sasi, you're talking about how you think our guests would try and, make 2034 materialize, because you're kind of breaking up. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that to our guests.
Well, thank you, Vic, for the comments. We were also very clear that there will be a lot of skepticism surrounding Goal 2034 after Goal 2010 did not achieve its objective. But again, I put it before people in Singapore. Do we want a vision for Singapore soccer, or do we just want to continue the way that we are? And for the FAS, we take the responsibility of putting something out there for the public to gravitate around, and we're hoping that people turn, from the quote of my favorite team, to make doubters into believers, right? And gravitate and back Singapore soccer. It's one thing to just say, we're always going to be like this, but that's not the leadership that we want to show. We want to put before the nation a vision that can actually bring Singapore soccer to a level. And look, we've seen examples of small countries out punching their weight. Singapore does it all the time in so many other fields. Why can't we do it in soccer?
Does that answer your question, Vic?
Yeah, okay, to a certain extent. But you see, that's going back to the what you were saying, that many small countries have done that. But that's what many of them are saying here. If all these countries had the support, had the resources, had the agencies to bring them to next level, like Iceland, for example, why are we still having these doubts continuing?
Maybe it's the difficulty in dragging children away from their mobile devices, but I'll leave it to the guests. It's Edwin Tong.
I think it's a fair point. I think it's fair for people to say, in the last couple of years, Singapore football has not been doing well. But as Bernard says, we can keep to where we are and say, in 2034, we will win the SEA Games. Is it realistic? Probably. Is that something that inspires the dream of the next generation of children? Probably not. So, yes, it's a milestone, it's a difficult ambition, but we put it out there, as Bernard says, to have people gravitate around it and marshal all our resources behind it. So it's a tough call for us to make, because we know that there'll be skepticism. But in the end, after deliberating it, we decided that as the National Football Association, it is our responsibility to put out something that helps us, if not get into the World Cup, at least improve the standard of football.
Let me be the devil's advocate.
Sasi, can I just add one more thing to Vic's comment? So Vic brought up Iceland, and actually the ingredients for Iceland's success are not too complicated. The first is all kids play. They actually do it as a social program to keep kids within school because they don't want them to get into trouble outside. And more than 70% of boys take soccer as their CCA. Number two, they have quality coaches. Every school has one or two UEFA B coaches together with our entire coaching staff. And number three, they have brilliant facilities for their kids to play, whether it's small-sided pitches, covered pitches, a lot of pitches. The ingredients are there. Can Singapore do something like that? We don't see why not. If we put our minds together, we can.
669-11938. We've got another segment coming up. Give us a call. Text us at 963-11938 if you're feeling reticent to talk to us. We've got another segment of Sports Talk Sunday coming your way after this.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Sunday. I'm R. Sasikumar, and joining me in the studio is Senior Minister of Law and Health, Edwin Tong, along with Bernard Tan, Deputy President for Football Association in Singapore. We're talking about Goal 2034, and we've got a caller here.
Yes, indeed. Suhaila, I apologize if I'm getting your name wrong. Good morning, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, that's right. You can call me Sue.
Go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, I I just turned on the radio and I heard a conversation this morning, and as a parent, and I thought I was going to say provide some feedback on this.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I've got two sons. One is secondary school. My eldest is Sept 2, and my younger one is in primary 5. They both love football, but the problem is I find that in school, football is not necessarily offered as an ECA. And like you said, right, in order to promote football, you need to get as many students playing the sport, if not competitively, as a leisure sport. I think it's a great sport. It's a team sport. It encourages teamwork, it encourages resilience. And I think it's sad that, Singapore having so much resources in our hands, we've got secondary schools and primary schools simply not having football as an ECA for boys. I think that it's really a lost opportunity right there.
Okay,
I'd like to hear from the Minister of the Football Association.
Yes, Bernard is going to take your question. Hang on, ma'am, for the answer.
Sue, thank you very much for the question. And coming from the Football Association of Singapore, obviously we support your position. It's an amazing statistic, but most parents, probably like yourself, know that not all schools offer soccer. Only about 60% of our schools actually offer soccer as a CCA. Now, schools obviously have the liberty and autonomy to choose what kind of sports they offer to their kids, but we think soccer is very important. And like you, we want to promote it. One of the problems, obviously, is that not all schools also have fields. Some of them share the fields, and that makes scheduling a problem. And that's why we are looking at alternatives. Every school does have an indoor hall. And, for primary school kids, especially, Sasi, and, you used to play as well, you don't need a lot of space. And the kids are not going to break the windows because they're going to keep the ball on the ground and start running around.
Well, not my boys. They're breaking everything at home.
And that's really what we want to do. But thank you for your feedback. And we need more parents like yourself to really go across and put that across that soccer is important. Kids want to play. And many times they go to schools and they don't offer, and then they have to go outside to go and pursue that. That takes a lot of time, takes away the time from all other pressing requirements like academia. We want to make it easy for kids to play. Thank you.
Sue, do you have a follow-up question?
Oh, I was just going to say that my kids love soccer so much. They find any way, any opportunity to play. I know my son, my eldest son, they bring their own balls to school, and after school, they'll find some space outside school to play. So I think if the school opens up the field, there is a huge field in his school. I think that would be good for boys to see, and especially for youth.
I'm glad you think about opening the schools, because if not, they're playing in my void deck, which drives me up the wall.
Which is not a bad thing. I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about, because when I was growing up, I played in the void deck.
But you played with a plastic ball. Here they're using this regulation balls, and they're going all over the place.
I want to be a bit more realistic. When I look at the SPL now, and I look at the structure, the way the league is structured, the FAS is structured, where are we going to find the money? But at the moment, we don't have a commercial department that's functioning in FAS. There's no CEO that's running the league now. And how are we going to achieve all of this? Because 15 years is a very short period of time. And if you don't put the infrastructure in place, in my opinion, we have gone back 10 years in the last 3-4 years in football. So we got to play catch up. We got to play catch up with the region first, then Asia. How are we going to do all of that in a very short space of time?
So I've got very strong views on the SPL, but I'll allow Edwin to go first because obviously he also has very strong views on this.
Well, I'll defer to his views on SPL, but I'll tell you something. We have to start with the proposition that we can only go up. Where we are now is not where we want to be. So what do we do about it? Yes, money is important, but I think it is the ingredient that follows the plans, not lead the plans. So as I said just now, we must first have the responsibility of charting out the course. Where do we go? Who do we bring along? How do we do it? And when the plans are there, I think there will be enough stakeholders who will come forward and assist with that. And I don't just mean government, I mean private sector, I mean other stakeholders as well. And that, I think, is the way to move forward. Let's not be too consumed with where we get the money first. Let's look at how the plans can be fleshed out, how we can make it realistic, and how we can bring everyone on board and iron out the big ticket items first. And once we do that, I think the commercial side of it, hopefully, we'll sort itself out.
You're dying to talk about the SPL, Bernard.
Well,
maybe?
the first thing I will say that, you know, when we have the SPL, there are a couple of things that I think we need to destroy as myth. The first is we don't want our best players to play in Singapore. We want our best players to play in Europe. I mean, full stop. If you see, today we have maybe about 12 to 16 players at any one time playing overseas. And I think Singapore soccer is better for that. Fundy Second Boy is playing in Norway. He has improved by leaps and bounds. That is the kind of exposure required to be world standard. We are not really looking at our players. I think the SPL is a place where you begin, perhaps end your career, but your best years, you're better off playing. So we want to be the best development league in our region.
So how do we plan to export the players?
So let me finish the point. So there are people who say, oh, our national team can only be as good as our national league. Let's take 3 examples, right? The Netherlands, Belgium, and Iceland do not have the first tier league. But they're all ranked in the top 30. Belgium is ranked number 2 in the world because they develop players. And that is the key that we want to actually achieve. Many of the changes were made in the SPL. It's heading towards the direction. It's subtle, but it's heading towards the direction. We put age caps because we want young kids to play. We want to blood our youngsters at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. We don't want the S League to be a 29-year-old average age league, which was what it was heading to when we took over. We have now brought it down, and we are going to try to see what else we need to do to emphasize that youth blooding so that we become something like Ajax Amsterdam, right, where they have experienced players bringing very young players that they can then go and make their mark across the world.
I saw a coach actually put on Facebook about the problems he's having players, dragging players to training because they paid $70 as an allowance and the player makes $20 delivering pizzas and he has to pay bills. So this becomes a real problem for players who want to commit to play football, but they can't. They live in a place where it's very expensive to upkeep households and stuff like that. So how are we going to address that? Because if the talented players are not coming forward, not every kid is blessed with resources for parents to take them there. We know the best players, well, like myself, when I was growing up, I had to take the bus myself. I had to fund everything myself. So when you look at that strata of society or that strata of player group, how are we going to bring the best? Because what you're saying, comparing us to all the top leagues in the world, they have history. They have connections to the club because I spent time in Holland, in Herenveen. The players go to the club, they eat there, they play there, they study. The bus actually takes them. Are we going to do all of that? Because from a top level, from a strategy perspective, it looks great. But from the ground level, when you try to execute all of these things, it's not going to happen because the coach is having problems dragging players into the ground where he can actually teach them. So I think that's where the problem lies at grassroots level. We can be great. Like I said, I'm with you on the 2034. I'm with you when you try to model the different leagues around the world. But what is really being done? And I want concrete examples. I want concrete facts. That what are we doing to address that part of society, that part of the group that is going to move us forward?
So the first thing, when you're talking about this $70, he's not an SPL professional player. He is probably in the development pipeline. So now, let me just be honest. You say you need to drag him to the place. That's the first thing we don't handle. We want to make sure youth development doesn't involve dragging. We want to make sure that we bring that youth development to the place where the youth is, and that is to schools. And this is part of the biggest program, is to put it and make it convenient so that the kids don't have to be dragged. He doesn't also have to weigh up whether I should be doing tuition and studying versus because you do it in school. And that's the building block of 2034. Number 2 is that I think for many of us who take up soccer, I also hear this argument a lot, right? Oh, we need to pay our players a lot. Look, Sasi, when you wanted to play football, did you really think about how many $1 million you make from it? I'm just asking myself, if an athlete takes up a sport in Singapore, wants to win a SEA Games gold, does he think about the monetary rewards as the first primary thing? I think most kids play and want to excel because they love the game and they want to see how far they can go. Now, obviously, a pot of gold helps. And I'm arguing that soccer's pot of gold is probably the largest of all sports. You take up rugby, you take up, swimming, and you take up soccer. Soccer, if you are at world standard, You're going to be a Cristiano Ronaldo, you will be a multi-millionaire many times. The money is there. It's just how far you can bring yourself from the youth standard to actually do that.
All right, we've been talking about Goal 2034 with Senior Minister of Law and Health, Edwin Tong, and Deputy President of FAS, Bernard Tan. A lot to cover, and I think we spoke a lot as well. And we're going to go for a quick break, and we come back, we're going to discuss a bit more.
No more.
Oh,
Randy.
we run
You
out of
are
time.
out of time. You are out of time. There was so much more that. So I'm going to. Yes, I guess Sasi will be bringing the minister and Bernard back in for redo, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Yes, but you can continue getting on this conversation. You can WhatsApp us at 9631138. You can hit us up on our Facebook page, CNA 938. You got questions or comments about sports talk? Let us have it as well. Sasi will be back next weekend with me. You've been listening to CNA 938. Minister and Bernard, thank you so much for being. Mr. Tong, thank you so much for being in on a Sunday morning as well.
Thank you
It is
very much,
time to
guys.
head for the news.
Thank you.